everybody. Nice to see you. I am the Paradise Engineer, and today I'm going to be talking about something I've been talking about for a long time. And it's not my usual article. At least I don't think it's more psychological. There's always psychology in what I talk about, but in this case, I want to talk about why we have such a roadblock to move towards what I like to call humanity's golden age, an age where people don't need to work for a living, where most crime is eliminated. The economy is completely different and running to serve us. And I do touch on these things in different articles, but right now I want to talk about why is it so hard to get there? Why is there so much resistance? Because the resistance actually comes from us. We usually blame, it's easy to blame governments and big companies that roadblocks, but we have to remember governments are full of elected officials and employees, and they are like us. They are the ones that are doing the blocking. It's not an unknown entity, robot, or computer that's hidden inside a wall. It's actually people inside those agencies, inside those organizations that are blocking progress. So it's always about people blocking progress. But why is that? Why is it so hard to move forward? And this is where the psychology comes in, because we have to understand how we human beings take decisions. And it's fairly simple if you break it down to the smallest denominator. In the simplest form, human beings are emotional beings, and we have a rational brain and an emotional brain, and they actually work together. They work in tandem. There's even experiments that show people that are disconnected from their emotions because of some accident, and their brain has these roadblocks or these blockages. You'd figure they'd be like Spock, no emotions, complete rationality, and be able to take decisions without emotions being in the way. But in reality, they are unable to take any kind of decision, which shows that the emotions that we have that actually drive some decisions, good or bad, are actually an important part of our rational decision-making process. But I don't want to get into the complications because it really doesn't need to be. What we need to understand is that the emotional part of our decision-making process actually occurs before we even start thinking rationally. And there's some links in the article that refers to some further articles where you can do some more reading. But in a nutshell, what happens is that we usually take a decision on anything from an emotional standpoint before the rational brain kicks in. And the rational brain, most often than not, justifies the emotions that the decision we already took using our emotions. And our emotional brain and decision process is based on our history, our stories, our emotional past, different experiences, people we've encountered, and so on. It's the body of living that we've had. And so that's why when presented to exactly the same facts, two different people can look at the facts and have a completely different opinion. It's because their decision-making process and the way they rationalize things is based on their emotional thinking of the facts, not the facts on their own. So you have situations where people are convinced they have the right reasoning with the same amount of facts, and the other person has the same facts and thinks completely differently, and there's fights, and there's arguments. And it's extremely hard to get out of it because you have to agree to disagree, even though the facts are there. We're not machines like robots that take decisions exclusively on facts. So that's part of you need to know this to be able to understand why we're not moving forward with building a beautiful future, engineering a paradise like I aspire to with you. So that's important, and because when there is something that is unknown, even if it's an idea that is really nice, It's unknown, so it's usually scary to people, because in our emotional past, we have lots of scary things that has happened to us, and it is uncomfortable. And emotionally, we are driven to action based on two different stimuli. One is chasing joy, and the other one is avoiding discomfort. So the unknown, except for some people that, because of their experiences, because of their how they were raised and educated in some form, they relish the unknown, or to be scared, or that sort of thing. It for them, it's a joyful experience. Most of us, it's actually uncomfortable to face something that is uncomfortable, potentially dangerous. It's something that pushes us back, that makes us take a step back. So the unknown, naturally, for the majority of the people, is scary. It's uncomfortable, and we want to step back. And remember what I just told you about how decision making works? It's emotional. So we are scared, we take a step back, and then the rational brain starts justifying why we are taking a step back and why we shouldn't move forward. Ergo, why we tend not to move forward towards something brand new that is ideologically or rationally much better than what we have now, but we don't know what it looks like or what it feels like. It's scary. So we find reasons why we shouldn't do that. And I hear about it all the time. I talk about things like bridging systems between now and the new economy, where AI is super efficient, called basic income, where we can kind of subsist as a civilization, and everybody eat and so on, while jobs are being completely automated. And we've had a lot of pilots in the past around the world that this is all good stuff, but because we haven't had a nation yet to adopt it and really see it running, and people kind of living it and seeing that it's okay, and yeah, everything's fine, the economy still runs, and blah, 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 without seeing it with their own eyes, well, people tend to comment on my comments on, I'm using that as an example, the basic income concept, with crazy rationality. And that is usually unsupported by facts, or they nitpick or choose the facts that suit their argument, because that's the mechanism in how we justify the decision we've already made with our emotions. So that's the roadblock. It's it's all of us. So the solution to that, there's two solutions if we want to move forward, and both of them we've seen happen in the past in our history. The first one is terrible. It is when we are on the brink of the precipice, when things go really, really bad. The reality is really uncomfortable, and remember, we want to move away from discomfort. Then it can be sufficiently uncomfortable to go more uncomfortable than the discomfort of creating something completely new and unheard of, and so on. So civilizations, when they're on the brink of destruction or catastrophe, sometimes we shift into a completely different direction and we rebuild and reinvent ourselves. But we need to suffer to do that, because again, it's our decision-making process is strictly based on seeking joy and avoiding discomfort. So if it becomes too uncomfortable today, well, maybe the discomfort of the unknown future is not so bad all of a sudden, and we shift, everybody kind of moves in that direction together, hand in hand, no problem. And that's how, for example, in the Second World War, when the US were attacked in Pearl Harbor, that hit them hard. It was very uncomfortable, and it mobilized the whole nation to a state of war, like women going to the factories to replace the men that were recruited and conscripted into the military. Everybody became active, and they like really delivered on and helped the Allies hugely in the Second World War and beat the Japanese and so on and so on. But that was like within like a few years, like they changed everything inside the US. And when the war was over, the US was not the same at all. It became an economic superpower that they were not quite before, all because of all these changes they did in a very short amount of time because of really powerful stress and discomfort. And we don't want Pearl Harbor. We don't want 9/11. We don't want these catastrophes to happen to move us. But there's the second option. The second option of how we get populations to move through roadblocks like this that are completely artificial and emotional is that we have to show the population how comfortable it is or how joyful it is on the other side. And that's typically a lot harder. Usually it takes a long time. For example, in the case of basic income, I'll use that. There's all these pilots. These are helpful because people can talk about their experiences within the small UBI they have in their nation, and that injects a little bit of experience to other people that haven't lived it themselves. Say, well, they were fine with it, so maybe it would be okay for us, and that sort of thing. And but it takes time because people really react viscerally to what they live themselves or their really close ones, not really a stranger in another country. So usually these we do change towards the future gradually because we need to show a little bit more change, just enough so it's not too uncomfortable and people are accepting and they see the advantage of it and they jump on it. But it's incremental and very, very slow. Now, we are fortunate these days because we have huge computing power, and we do have now deep learning AI and other tools, software that allows us to simulate very complex systems. There's a computer, I believe it's already built, or it is about to be activated, that is designed to simulate weather patterns globally, like years ahead of time. It is an extremely complicated thing, but we have the technology to do that, to create a simulation, an accurate one, hopefully. I mean, it is weather, but so that we can see into the future, and then we know, okay, well, this is going to happen. What if we tweak this variable and it changes things? Oh, then we can see, and we can see ahead of time. And if we develop trust with these tools, that they may be fairly accurate in their prophecies in the simulation, then we can start ourselves feeling comfortable with the simulated future. Ergo, we could simulate a brand new economy, a brand new system, a national basic income, internet for free across the nation, whatever program that seems a little bit nuts or a little bit complicated that's never been done before. We can simulate it, show it to the people, and if there's confidence in the system, then that's going to bring the people into a state of acceptance or avoidance of discomfort that is palatable enough to move in bigger steps towards the future and build something. So we could build those tools that would facilitate that, and thus we can avoid what is coming now in the next 10, 15 years, I estimate, where if we don't move towards a basic income or any kind of other tool to stabilize incomes and make sure everybody gets what they need to eat and survive, while automation taking over most of the paid tasks, that we'll reach points of catastrophes, which means perhaps a few years of suffering for a lot of people and death, to the point where people have had enough. It's enough discomfort, and then they take a decision to move forward quickly. So I'm assuming most people rationally would prefer to take door number 2 and avoid catastrophe. But that is rational thinking. In our daily lives, when we take the time to figure out, are we going to go and take the leap or not into things that affect our families and our livelihood and perhaps potentially how everything works around us, people balk because the emotions kick in. It's no longer rational. Then we find all sorts of reasons why we shouldn't do it. So we got the tools. We can build simulations to facilitate us moving into a golden age. And hopefully avoid the catastrophe that is looming and coming. We don't know exactly when, but it will come somewhere between now and 2040. So within the next 20 years. And yeah, if we want to build a paradise, we'll try to build like an engineer where there's minimal deaths, shall we? That's it for now. Bye-bye. And I'll talk to you again in about a couple of weeks with another topic.